Hundreds of thousands of Israelis took to the streets on Sunday evening to protest against Prime Minister Netanyahu's government for its failure to secure a ceasefire deal in Gaza. The immediate reason behind these protests was the death of 6 captives in Gaza, including 1 American, whose bodies were found by the Israeli military nearly 11 months after Hamas took them hostage during the October 7 attacks. At least 100 more hostages are still in captivity by Hamas, and the majority of them are believed to be alive. Israel had a successful experience of securing a hostage deal in exchange for a temporary ceasefire in November last year, during which 105 Israeli hostages were released. Since then, the majority of the Israeli population has demanded a ceasefire from the Netanyahu-led government. Talks between the two sides, mediated by Egypt, Qatar, and others, have been ongoing since then, but there has not been any breakthrough. Both sides have blamed each other for the lack of progress. At the end of May this year, President Biden presented a 3-phase ceasefire plan for Gaza, which included the release of prisoners from both sides, the rebuilding of Gaza, and a permanent ceasefire. While presenting this plan, Biden said that Israel had agreed to it and called on Hamas to accept it.
The proposal has been transmitted by Qatar to Hamas. Today I want to lay out its terms for the American citizens and for the world.
A deal seemed imminent after that, but Netanyahu introduced a set of new, non-negotiable conditions that have mostly stalled the negotiations. These conditions included maintaining Israeli forces on the Philadelphia corridor along the Egyptian border and the Netzarim corridor, which divides northern and southern Gaza. Since then, thousands of Palestinians in Gaza have lost their lives, and Israel has ramped up its operations in the West Bank and Lebanon. In the meantime, Israel has concentrated on rescuing captives through military operations rather than diplomatic negotiations. In early June, Israel conducted an operation that successfully freed 4 captives but resulted in the deaths of over 200 Palestinians, according to Palestinian health officials. This strategy has met with criticism from both Israeli citizens and its allies in the West. Netanyahu also became unpopular as a poll in July found that 72% of Israelis felt Netanyahu should resign over his failure to prevent attacks like October 7, though his popularity rose in hardline factions of Israeli society. Since the start of the latest escalation between Hamas and Israel, the United States has supported Israel militarily and diplomatically and stifled critical voices in its own society. But in recent weeks, President Biden has also criticized Netanyahu publicly for not showing interest in the ceasefire deal amid rising opposition to the Gaza war among Democrats. In early June, he suggested Netanyahu was prolonging the war for personal and political gains in an interview with Time magazine. On Monday, he told reporters outside the White House that the U.S. is very close to presenting a final proposal that would lead to the release of Israeli hostages in Gaza. He was asked about Netanyahu and his efforts.
On this issue, do you think he's doing enough?
No.
Another staunch ally of Israel, Britain, has also suspended some arms sales to Israel, citing a clear risk of breaching international law. This is one of the most drastic actions taken by any Western government since October 7.
It is with regret that I inform the House today the assessment I have received leaves me unable to conclude anything other than that for certain UK arms exports to Israel, there does exist a clear risk that they might be used to commit or facilitate a serious violation of international humanitarian law. I have informed my Right Honourable friend, the Business and Trade Secretary, and he is therefore today announcing the suspension of around 30 from a total of approximately 350 to Israel as required under the Export Controls Act.
However, Britain's arms trade with Israel is nowhere near the United States, totaling around $55 million while America provides $3.8 billion in annual military aid to Israel. But it will increase significant pressure on Israel to stop civilian deaths, which crossed 40,000 in August. In late July, Prime Minister Starmer dropped the objections raised by the previous government to the International Criminal Court's prosecutors' demand for arrest warrants for Netanyahu, Yoav Gallant, and top Hamas officials. It also restarted funding the UN agency that aids Palestinians, UNRWA. But Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is pushing back against this growing pressure from outside and inside. In his 22-minute Hebrew speech on Monday, he signaled that he was in no mood to compromise.
ציר הרשע צריך את ציר פילדלפי. ומאותה סיבה, אנחנו חייבים לשלוט בציר פילדלפי. חמאס מתעקש מהסיבה הזאת שלא נהיה שם, ומהסיבה הזאת אני מתעקש שכן נהיה שם. הנוכחות בציר פילדלפי היא קודם כל עניין מדיני אסטרטגי. אנחנו חייבים לקבע את העובדה שאנחנו שם.
He reiterated his previous mantra to eliminate Hamas.
במלחמה נגד ציר הרשע, במלחמה הספציפית הזאת, נגד חמאס, וגם בצפון, אנחנו הצבנו 4 מטרות. לחסל את החמאס, להשיב את כל חטופינו, להבטיח שעזה לא תהווה עוד איום על ישראל, ולהשיב בבטחה את תושבינו בגבול הצפון.